is in a way aimed at young adults. You talk about your own conversion away from religion and towards science and evolution theory at the age of 15. And one almost feels in it that you're still cross with yourself, that you believed in the divine explanation of creation for as long as you did.
Not exactly cross, but I do feel strongly that...
I clung to it, you said.
Well, yes. I mean, I don't worry about that too much. I mean, it was a normal thing to do. I went to Anglican schools. But I do feel that young people do need to grow out of it, grow out of all kinds of superstition, actually. Although I'm very keen not to indoctrinate. I'm very keen to spread the message that you should think for yourself rather than be told what to think.
When you were 15 and you had this realization and you came to embrace the love of science and evolution theory, if I may say so, I reckon that was 1956. This country has changed a lot since then, hasn't it? I mean, we have a country now in which only 11% of people apparently go to a religious service regularly. Haven't you won the battle? Is this book necessary in that sense?
Well, I do worry about the way children are labelled with the religion of their parents, as though it's somehow thought to be hereditary in some sort of way. You talk about a Catholic child or a Protestant child. You never talk about an existentialist child or a logical positivist child or a socialist child. But religion somehow gets a free pass to stamp a label on a child. And we see it in Northern Ireland, where you talk about Catholic children, Protestant children going to school and being indoctrinated. I do think we need to break that cycle of more almost hereditary passing on of a religion from one generation to the next.
Is it harmful, though? I mean, that's just a way of bringing kids up, isn't it, which millions of people choose in these islands as well as further afield.
You look at Northern Ireland and you look at these two tribes, and they've been going on for hundreds of years like this, and the only difference that actually persists over these generations is religion.
Northern Ireland, though, apart, I mean, if one looks at the mainstream education system in Britain...
we have Islamic schools, we have Jewish schools, we have Catholic schools,
and you'd get rid of all of those, would you?
I would keep the schools, but I would remove the denominational status of them. Yes.
I want to read you a quote from the book. Now, you look at various aspects of religious belief, and you talk about myths. There's nothing wrong with myths, you write. Some are beautiful and most are interesting, but they aren't history. Unfortunately, many uneducated people, especially in America and the Islamic world, think they are. I mean, what have you got against Americans and people who follow Islam? Because, as you say yourself, all societies have myths.
I mean, the
Indians, the Chinese.
Yes.
But why do you pick on Americans and people who follow Islam and talk about uneducated?
Well, because believing that myths are literally true, that's what worries me. I'm a scientist, I believe in truth. And so people in America who believe that Adam and Eve literally lived and that it took 6 days for God to create the world, I mean, that is pernicious.
Well, in the Adam and Eve context, you write in the book, no educated person believes that Adam and Eve were the prototypes for humanity. True. And then you say, but an awful lot of Americans do. And I wonder what your definition is of an educated person. Is it just someone who agrees with you on this?
No.
They've got a good education system in America.
They've got a very good education system, and yet 40% of Americans believe that humans were created less than 10,000 years ago. That's what I call uneducated.
But is that, I'm wondering whether that's one of your reasons for writing this book, is that you feel that the persistence of religious ideas has checked the progress of rational or scientific-based explanations for things like creation.
Well, I should differentiate religious ideas from creationism. I mean, bishops and archbishops and popes and cardinals and vicars, most of them, would vigorously dissent from Adam and Eve. I mean, they do not believe in Adam and Eve. They believe in evolution. So it would be a shame to blame religious people for that. But as I said, 40%, just under 40% now, of Americans believe that humans were created in their present form less than 10,000 years ago. That is an educational scandal.
But what is your proposed solution to it? I mean, people choose to believe that. despite the fact they've been to American schools in which they will have been taught evolution and scientific theories.
Well, the way they're taught evolution is, we don't believe this, but we have to teach it. That's how they're taught it.
I just wonder whether your definition of what an education is a dogma in itself, is an alternative form of philosophy, not a religion, clearly, but a form of philosophy.
Are you seriously suggesting that Adam and Eve should be taken seriously as an alternative form of science?
No, I'm simply saying, and as you said yourself, many bishops don't believe it's literally true.
All bishops, I hope.
But people may choose to believe these things. As you say, myths have their place in human society. There are all kinds of beliefs that people may have in spite of apparent scientific signs to the contrary. I just wonder why you categorise these people as uneducated, why you can't respect their choice.
Would you respect the choice of a flat earther, for example? I mean, these are scientific falsehoods that they believe. Demonstrable falsehoods.
What is it, though, that particularly causes you to home in on America and believers in Islam in this context? Because every culture has myths.
I don't think there's any evidence that a very high percentage of people in this country, for example, believe in Adam and Eve or believe that the world was created in 6 days. They do in America, 40%, and a much higher percentage believe that in Islamic countries.
You do have a problem with Islam, though, it seems.
I have a problem with anyone who promotes scientific falsehoods to children.
What is your answer? I mean, you look at the role of religion and its role in people's behaviour, in their outlook, and there are one or two points in the book where you almost seem ready to concede that it might be a positive. You talk about the great spy camera in the sky, for example, at one point.
Yes.
And the likelihood of people to behave in a more moral or responsible way if they believe God's eye is upon them.
Yes, I mean, that's interesting because clearly policing works, and if people think that there's a real spy camera looking at them, they don't shoplift. And so if they sincerely and honestly believe that God is watching them, then this might mean that they'd be less likely to perform criminal acts.
That's a positive, then. And if I can ask you as well...
you say it's a positive, but I would say it's a rather ignoble reason.
Robbing, if it stops them committing crime.
It would have that social benefit, but I wouldn't want to add that it's a rather ignoble motive for being good.
Well,
and I did say that in the book too.
Okay, but also I would like to ask you, just before we're out of time, if you can see that there's value in that, what about the value of religion for people in moments of personal crisis, the loss of a child, or of great personal happiness, celebrating a wedding? I mean, many people who aren't particularly religious and don't believe literally in Adam and Eve or much of the Bible will want a church wedding, won't they?
Yes, they will.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with it. And I like church music. I love Bach and Mozart, Requiem, and so on. So yes, I mean there is value. There is artistic value. There's artistic value in great cathedrals, beautiful stained glass windows, beautiful music, beautiful art. There's plenty of that kind of value, but it doesn't make it true. And I do care about what's true, and we do need to differentiate the admiration for great art, religious art, and what is actually true or false.